The next question is not really a question. It's actually a comment from our last podcast that Matt and I did in the Loan Tracker. And I'm reading this because I actually really like the comment. And the discussion was about whether or not, like, is it better for a player to go to Castilla, a young player to go to Castilla and play every week, or is it better for him to go to another club on loan and never play but gain experience and learn from training and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. So Shannon says, I completely disagree with you guys. Kids develop better whilst playing. I can admit training with better players and learning from them is beneficial to their development. However, being promised game time and not receiving said game time could be detrimental to a young kid's psyche, morale, and confidence. Not everyone has the drive and mental strength of someone like Cristiano. I don't believe it's a case of young players being ill-advised or believing their own hype. They just want to play, and they feel they aren't improving sitting on the bench. If Kubo was lacking something, then we should have kept him at Castilla for a 6 to 12 months span to improve on it. These loaning clubs don't care about development. They're looking for someone who's already better than what they have, or someone who can fill that role when needed. Their interest is staying in La Liga, not developing Madrid's young players. So I'm curious to know, Lucas, if you have thoughts on this.
Well, I'm not sure if Shannon is actually taking something out of context from Matt and your podcast, but I agree with his comment. Even although it's important to mention that the level of that playing time is actually important, because if you were to ask me, would you rather have Kubo playing for Castilla or Kubo training and playing some minutes here and there for Villarreal and Getafe, I would probably pick the latter option. I would probably pick the one where he is actually able to improve through training with quality players, because the level in Segunda B is definitely not high enough for him to reach his potential. But I would also consider that I would rather him play in Getafe than him sitting on the bench for Real Madrid, even though he would be training with quality players like the ones Real Madrid have on the current squad. So it's a mix of both options, but definitely if the alternative to him to his current status was playing for Castilla week in and week out, I'd rather him taking a loan deal to Villarreal and Getafe, if this is what we're talking about.
So the context is, I asked Matt, is it better for a player, like, I think it was actually specific to Reinier Jesus. I don't know if maybe, but it applies to everybody anyway. Like, Reinier Jesus isn't playing at all. So my question was, is it better for Reinier Jesus to go to Castilla and play every week and be really, really good and be a big fish in a small pond, or is it to go to Dortmund and not play at all, but maybe learn things from Haaland and Sancho and those guys?
Look, if I were to pick, I would probably pick the Dortmund option, but there's middle ground, and you can send him to, for example, Valladolid, and he can play there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like you can only choose a high quality club like Dortmund where he's not going to play, or Castilla where the minutes are not going to be very important towards his development, because we know the level of the Segunda División B. So, but you can definitely make a better choice than the one Real Madrid made by sending him to Dortmund, just because I assume, and I know, we read reports linking him to Valladolid and other clubs. I can assume that there were other clubs smaller than Dortmund, but definitely better than Castilla, interested in Reinier, and Real Madrid should have probably accepted their own offer, because it definitely would be much more valuable for Reinier to play good minutes in smaller clubs than Dortmund, than the experience he's getting in the Bundesliga right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And they didn't have to send him to Dortmund. I mean, Valladolid would have been... Exactly. We've always said Valladolid's an ideal choice because it's close to Madrid and it's a small team and you can play there. Obviously, it hasn't worked out in the past with other loanees who've just gone there, like Jorge de Frutos, for example. But... Javi Sanchez and other players who have gone there. But I think, like, I'm always amazed when a loanee player, it doesn't work out. Because I just assume that you've thought about this decision so much that you just know he's going to a good situation. Like, I'm just amazed that, for example, you can send out a player on loan and that player never plays. So, like, why did you send him there then? And if the answer was like, well, we didn't know he wasn't going to play, well, then you should know. You have to know these things. You can't just assume. Unless you know for sure they're going to play, what's the point of sending them there? I do think Dortmund was ultimately way too big a leap for Renier, who was playing at Castilla last season. But the thing is, like, with this comment from Shannon, I wholeheartedly agree with her. And because I thought about this a lot after the podcast with Matt, and I think about this stuff often. I'm not even sure I really provided an opinion either way, but I kind of just asked the question to Matt. But my feeling is it's just better to play regularly. And, like I always said, like, if I were Real Madrid president, which would be impossible, because unless they change the rules to like a Canadian with no money is eligible and like only I'm eligible, then maybe. But I always feel like if I was Real Madrid president one day, half of my mandate would literally just be to get Castilla to Segunda, put all of the talent there, get them up the ranks, and they'll never have to worry about this problem again. They can just play there, and then they're a stone's throw away for a call-up whenever you need them, and they will dominate. They will get to Segunda. They will stay in Segunda because there'll be so much talent there. Like, think of a team in Segunda with Kubo and Ashraf and Reguilon and all these guys, and then every year it's a different pool of talent. So like Marcos Llorente one year, another year it's Sergio Arribas, whoever it is, that team is just going to be really, really good. Reinier Jesus, and that team can just dominate in Segunda, and they're already at a high level. So when we pull them up, we can use them. Like right now, for example, if like, so here's the example, Lucas, Odegaard. Or Kovacic even. Kovacic is a good one. The other problem you avoid is like a player going to another team and being like, oh, this is an awesome place to be. I want to stay here. And then you just kind of lose them. Kind of like the way Ashraf and Kovacic, they just kind of left because they found other situations that were good. Maybe you don't avoid it entirely, but I just kind of like the idea of like, and this is a little bit Raptors inspired. So anyone from Toronto will know what I'm talking about, but probably an NBA fan will know what I'm talking about. The Raptors have the equivalent of like a Castilla youth team in the Raptors 905. And all of these guys that they're using now are from that team. Everyone from Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Chris Boucher, Matt Thomas, Norman Powell. These guys were all, they're all NBA players now. Like some of the best NBA players you can have in the Eastern Conference are in that team because of this Raptors 905 team. It's a developmental team. So it's kind of inspired by that because I just think that makes sense. I mean, think about where Quinta del Buitre came from. They all came at the same time. You just kind of pulled them up from Castilla. So sometimes I feel like maybe we underestimate the fact that if we get Castilla to a really high level and keep them in Segunda, having them play week in, week out in Segunda, I think is better than going to a bigger club and not playing at all.
Oh, definitely. We've talked about this in the past, and I agree with you there in the sense that having a strong Castilla team playing in Segunda would be huge for Real Madrid because they wouldn't have to make these weird decisions where they actually send some of their promising talent out away from the club just because they are not going to be able to play for the first team. So, for example, we have Odegaard in the past who could have played for a strong Castilla team in Segunda instead of going to the Eredivisie for 2 years or so. Lunin as well. Definitely Rainier this season. Reguilon in the past as well. Maybe not anymore, but that's Raf as well. So I definitely agree with you that it would be one of my focus points as well because it's definitely very important.